The RoadTech PA1 by Cruz Tools is a toolkit specifically designed for the Harley-Davidson Pan America. Just how good is it? Is it all that you need to support this bike while you're on the road? Or is it lacking in some areas? Let's check it out and see. So I decided I wanted to put together a specific dedicated toolkit that I could take with me on the bike when I'm heading out on trips, rather than just grabbing a bunch of tools out of the garage toolbox like I've been doing. So I looked into Cruz Tools and their RoadTech PA1 toolkit. So let's go ahead and check it out and see what we get in this. In the box, we have our tools already packed up in a nice tool roll here, and of course the obligatory vendor sticker. Unroll it, and inside we can see a number of tools here. Let me go ahead and move this box out of the way. First thing that sticks out to me is we got a little roll of duct tape here, and then a little miniature 1/4-inch drive ratchet. Baby ratchet, do-do-do-do-do. We get a little extension for said baby ratchet. We have a front axle, multiple size front axle tool, followed by some sockets, all of which are 1/4-inch drive, 13, 12, 10, and 8. Next we have a number of hand Torx wrenches, some Loctites included. And then we have this 6-way, 6-in-1 screwdriver. So we have a Phillips, and of course we could flip it the other way around for a flathead. And you can take the whole thing out, and you have two more different sizes on the other end, a smaller Phillips and then a larger flathead. And if you take the screwdriver bits out, you have two different sizes of nut drivers. And with the larger size on this one, what I like is that all of these torque wrenches fit in their Torx wrenches, I should say, not torque wrenches, Torx, fit in here so that you can use this to get additional leverage. We have a number of hex or Allen head keys, a handful of zip ties and some safety wire, a tire gauge, small set of vice grips, a adjustable crescent wrench, another extension for the 1/4-inch drive ratchet and sockets, and then we have 4 combination wrenches, 10, 12, 13, and 14 millimeter, followed by a multi-wrench, not sure what you want to call this, but it's closed-end wrenches, 32 millimeter, 14, and 22. And then you have a 36 millimeter that also has a extension for getting more leverage on that. Okay. So let's dive in a little deeper on some of the tools and how they relate specifically to the Pan America. Cruz includes the Torx wrenches, sizes T20 through T45. The Pan America, I think Harley-Davidson in general, but the Pan America definitely has a lot of Torx bit fasteners on it. The T45 in particular, it's a pretty beefy one. You're going to use this one to loosen up the pinch bolt on your lower fork if you need to loosen the axle. A T40 will take care of your skid plate fasteners, and the T30 will work for tightening up your hand controls, the pin that holds the brake pads in the caliper, as well as your exhaust shield fasteners and a number of other smaller fasteners across the bike. And a T25 is going to take care of your windscreen fasteners as well as the screws holding in the lower fairings if you need to take those off. As far as your hex or Allen key fasteners, there's not a whole lot on the bike that uses these, with the exception of the brakes. This 8 millimeter Allen key is going to work for your front brake calipers, and the little 4 millimeter one will work for removing the pivot pin on the front brake lever. However, it's still handy to have a whole set because if you're like me and you've added some aftermarket things like bark busters and other clamps, a lot of those will use hex Allen key style fasteners. So let's talk about this axle adapter. The Pan America takes a 22 millimeter hex for the front axle, and the larger part of this fits in there just fine. But once that's in there, you're left with either an 18 millimeter hex to drive it or this little 10 millimeter one. And there's no 18 millimeter wrenches or sockets in this kit. So that means you're either going to use the 10 millimeter box end wrench to try and bust your front axle loose, or you're going to use the crescent wrench to try and get around the 18 millimeter part. And if it wasn't for the fact that that front axle is torqued to 80 couple foot-pounds, this may work. But you're likely going to need more leverage, means you're going to have to do something sketchy. I'll try this at home, folks. To solve that issue, I added a 19 millimeter wrench to my kit. This is just a Harbor Freight combo 19 millimeter wrench that I cut off the open end. The box end slips over the axle adapter perfectly, and by cutting off the open end, one, it allows it to fit in the tool roll nicer, but another benefit is I can now take this aluminum extension from the toolkit and it slips over this as well to give me more leverage for breaking that front axle loose. I like the little vice grips. Those could come in handy, especially if you happen to go down and you snap a shift lever, brake lever, a clutch lever, right? I can see these coming in handy to grip on whatever is left so that you still have something that you can access and operate that control. Let's talk about the wrenches. You have 4 combo wrenches, 10, 12, 13, and 14. 13 in particular is going to come in handy for your chain slack adjusters as well as the engine guards. The engine guard that goes up top under the tank, you can't quite get to with this wrench, so you're left with using the 13 millimeter socket. And again, this is just a 1/4 inch drive. And so using it with the little teeny baby ratchet, right? Those engine guards are about 20 foot-pounds of torque is what they're torqued into. So that's kind of a lot to try and use, put through this little teeny ratchet and the ratcheting mechanism. For that fastener, really, I think you should have a 3/8 drive, socket, and ratchet. But I understand we can only fit so much in a tool roll. So I'm also adding, I have a 1/4 inch drive little breaker bar. So it's still 1/4 inch drive, not the best, but at least I don't have to worry about breaking any ratcheting mechanism, any teeth, as I'm putting the extra effort to break those engine guards loose. Now the baby ratchet with an extension and the 10 millimeter socket does work great for removing the front fuel tank bolts. The 14 and 13 millimeter wrenches will work together to do your clutch cable adjustment, the adjuster that's underneath the tank if you need to do that. And the 14 millimeter wrench is the right size for doing your mirrors if they happen to get knocked loose and you need to tighten them back up, or you need to make any kind of adjustment to them on the road. And then wrapping up with the axle wrenches. So this combo one, really the only one that applies on the Pan America is this 32 millimeter. This does the left-hand side of the axle to hold that still, while the 36 millimeter is what goes over the axle nut to break it loose. And you do have, again, this little aluminum extension, but you might still find yourself needing more leverage than you can apply by hand. After all, we are talking about a nut that is tightened to 100 foot-pounds. Overall impressions of the quality of the tools themselves. The tools seem okay. I would say they feel and seem on par with what you could expect to get from Harbor Freight, if you will, especially the wrenches. So just for example, the 14 millimeter Cruz wrench weighs 104 grams on my scale. When I compare that to a traditional Craftsman raised panel wrench, the Craftsman is a good bit heavier at 114 grams. So again, I don't think we're talking about tool truck quality tools by any means, but these aren't really designed to be used every day on a regular basis. They're designed to help you out in a pinch on the road. Now that being said, is it worth its $150 price tag? I do like the tool roll itself. The tool roll feels very good quality, and I do like how this tool roll was made for this toolkit, and so there's a spot for everything in here. And again, with the proliferation of Torx bit fasteners throughout the bike, I like that it comes with a good selection of small-sized yet pretty sturdy Torx bit wrenches to use. And of course, you have the specialty tools like the axle wrenches that, yes, you can buy axle wrenches. I have ones that I have in my toolbox for this bike, but they're a good bit bigger and wouldn't be convenient to stuff in a tool roll like this. And the same with the front axle adapter. This one is nice and compact and fits the Pan America. Other axle adapters that you're going to find are going to be a lot bigger because they have a lot of different sizes for different bikes. Could you build your own for cheaper? Maybe. Especially if you already have some extra wrenches and sockets that you're willing to give up for your tool roll kit. Overall, I'm pleased with it. If you want to grab one for yourself, there's a link in the description. As always, thanks for watching and ride safe.